So I'm so excited. I'm here with Ken Thewes, the Chief Marketing Officer of Regal Cinemas. Ken, welcome. It is so great to talk to you.
Thank you, Tanya. It's great to be part of your show.
And with such an exciting announcement, you're, I think, almost 100% open. What does that feel like?
It's been fantastic. We started opening up theaters at the beginning of April, so it took about 7 weeks to get all of our theaters open. In the meantime, we've done some grand openings of brand new theaters that were built during COVID. So we're really at a point now where we're ready for business. The big movies have started to come, and it's an exciting time.
I have so many questions around all of that, but I'm going to start with Ken. So you're the Chief Marketing Officer. Can you tell us a little bit about what does a CMO do from your perspective?
Yeah, well, hopefully he or she has hired some great people that can really get the key work done. But I've got a pretty phenomenal team. We're structured in 4 different groups. So I've got a media team, a loyalty and insights team, a what we call corporate box office, which is our B2B team that handles things like gift cards, group events, church events. And I've got a communications team that does PR, and local marketing.
Got it. Perfect. And as you sort of think about some of the things that are top of mind for you, and maybe right now or just in general in your role, you've spoken a lot about your loyalty program, but like you're across all of these sort of swim lanes. How do you figure out what's most important and where to focus?
Well, coming out of COVID, it was pretty easy. We have to scream we're open and make sure everybody knows that we're open in all of the markets, because really we were the last major chain to open up our theaters. So our competition got a little bit of a head start, even though there weren't a lot of movies to be seen. So I think our focus right now is just on the awareness that we're open. And beyond that, I think, it's really how do we differentiate ourselves from the competition, because we're all playing the same movies. We've got to try to get the consumer in markets where there's a Regal and another choice to pick Regal. And so that's a really big focus that we've got across all of the disciplines.
Yeah, and I know, yours was the cinema that I frequented most, particularly where I was living for most of my time in Manhattan, down in Battery Park. We had a Regal just close by. But I do remember, noticing that your loyalty program approached things differently. Like it wasn't just a sort of points for popcorn type approach. What was your imprint on that? How did you approach that? Because I know, when you are all there with movies and food, differentiating is a big opportunity and challenge.
Yeah. So when I got to Regal, that's pretty much what our loyalty program was. It was a points for popcorn, soda, and movies. And you really didn't have to be that active. It managed itself. And so again, we wanted something that, the core of loyalty is deep down, it's to connect with the consumer more and give them a reason to come to you more frequently. And data was a big part of that. So we weren't using the data previously. And that's been a big focus of ours. So now, every week we're sending 10 million plus emails, and there are hundreds of versions of those emails because we're targeting our customers in different ways and in the ways that really matter to them. And beyond that, for the person who is in it for the rewards, we really expanded, and we still have our popcorn, soda, and movie tickets, but we recognize people come to Regal because they love the movies. And so we've got a lot of rewards that are tied to and connected to the movies that are playing in our theaters.
Yeah, and I hear that we may have some exciting things happening in the augmented reality space and some other things that I don't know if you're ready to comment on at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. We launched augmented reality about 2.5 years ago, and it's really been evolving since then. So it's a feature in our mobile app. And again, one of the key reasons we incorporated augmented reality was to differentiate, but then also to get people to open up that mobile app, not just when they want to look at what's playing or when they want to buy a ticket. And when we can get our customers in that habit, we know they'll come back more frequently, and they do. And so we're really just launching a really cool feature trying to get on the trend of digital collectibles, where we're launching a digital collectible crown series. So when you do certain acts, like when you see specific movies or when you hit a certain threshold in the Crown Club, there'll be crowns that you will earn and collect virtually. So you can put them in your world. You can save them on things like your Pinterest page. And it's just another fun way to engage. And, we'll have some bragging rights competitions, and we'll be rewarding those members that get more crowns for certain acts.
Yeah, well, and with so much buzz, I'm sure, around NFTs and all of that, I'm sure that feeds into that. So, talking now a little bit about, I know you oversee social media. And, looking across some of what Regal was doing on social media was what actually first led us to connect.
Sure.
Like the tone for a lot of your social, like it feels, very entertainment focused, which makes sense because you have all the films, but it really, you're differentiated on social because of that voice and how you're, really acting as a source for information. Not only, hey, to come and, watch movies here, like that's obviously a component of it. But you took a very precise sort of editorial mentality around, how you went to social media. Can you tell me a little bit about the role of social and how you sort of decided to go that way? Because even though I know you have tickets to sell, and I'm sure that that's what social does drive on a lot of levels, it doesn't feel that way, right? It feels like you're going to a friend who's keeping you in the know.
And that's a great way to frame it. It's another way to keep engaged with our members and our fans. And again, I think in a similar way that we're leveraging augmented reality, we want to have a very consistent and constant presence on social media. So I'd say, a few years ago, I mean, we're probably pushing 10 years or more, we used an agency who really managed, they were experts as we were all learning about this thing called social media. And then a few years ago, we really took it in-house. And again, we've got a great team of people who, are experts in some of the social platforms that maybe I have passed me by. I'm not experimenting, but
I hear it on good authority. You're about to become a big TikTok influencer. So I don't know.
If they can train me, that's maybe secondary to just having Regal have a presence on TikTok. But it really is that we're in a fun industry, and it's a lot of fun to just keep that conversation going. So we try not to take ourselves too seriously. We absolutely want to make sure that we give love to all of the movies that are playing in our theaters, because we know no matter how big or small, there's a core audience for all of those movies. And so social is one way that, allows us to target our first party data and get the right movie in front of the right customer when they're on whatever social platform they're on.
As you think about, your approach, and I'm sure, a lot of this was really tested during the pandemic, but I mean, do you view yourself as data-led, creative-inspired, data-inspired, creative-led, or something, something different to any of those options?
Yeah, I think we're aspiring to be data-led. I certainly don't think that we're there yet. But again, it's really, when you pull back to what marketing is, it is that balance of creativity and kind of data-based decision making. And I think we're trying to follow that on social. One of the great things we've got is that the studios have almost never-ending content. But again, one of the challenges in differentiating is, lots of people are using that studio content. So we are always looking for ways to create content on our own. We've got some really talented in-house graphic artists that help us with that. And, I think it's a blend of what the studios provide us, what we create on our own, and trying to craft, that voice that's a bit unique from others.
Yeah, it definitely comes across, because there is sort of the materials that are provided, but there is this sense of a confidant keeping you in the know, which definitely came across. So let's shift gears for a second. So, 2020 happens, and I happen to have it on good authority that you are no stranger to sort of throwing yourself into perilous situations. I was doing my research on you, and I hear some rumor that you attempted to cross Lake Erie and that you almost got halfway in sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah, maybe not quite sub-zero, but I definitely got hypothermia. This was back in my high school days. So for those keeping track, it was many years ago. But, I always like a challenge. That was a challenge. And, I failed. But again, I think if you don't take on things that are challenging, you're never going to grow. And I try to take that approach with really everything I do, in marketing is no exception. But 2020 was a year I don't want to relive again, as I think most of us don't. But, we learned a lot. We stayed engaged with our customers on social, and we actually saw them having higher engagement during COVID than when we were open with our theaters, which maybe isn't a surprise because people were craving content, craving things to do. But it was a great way for us to kind of continue to build and cement the relationship that we have with our followers.
Yeah, and I would actually, I really wouldn't discount it. Like, certainly consumers, like, we did see growth in overall social media engagement, but there was growth in content, right? There was a lot of, and some industries went dark, of course. But no, I found it, very noticeable that your engagement went up, right? When people couldn't actually come to cinemas. How did you begin to break that down? How did you keep the conversation going when you essentially didn't have something to sell? Like, what was that? How did you break that down as a marketer?
Well, it was a challenge. And again, I think we went into this thinking, hey, we just want to do some base level posting, that engagement was going to really fall, is what we guessed. And as we saw it climb, we really weren't sure that it was accurate, and but it was consistent. Yeah. And so, but that was the challenge. And, there were any number of movies that, when you look 2 or 3 months out, they were preparing to open. So Tenet was a great example. Tenet kept pushing. Warner Brothers, I think, were great partners. They weren't pushing it 6 months out. They were pushing it a month or two out, not knowing what the future held. So there were movies like that we were able to talk about. We stayed engaged with our loyalty members. We were able to talk about some of those things. We were doing some things with augmented reality. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but we were definitely, looking for whatever new content we could bring to the customer to keep them engaged.
And as you approached, as cinemas started to open back up, and I know there were definitely some fits and starts there, but maybe a big release like Wonder Woman, 1984, or Godzilla versus Kong more recently, which were simultaneously released on streaming. I think it was HBO Max as well as the cinema. How did you think about that? Like, did you know it was going to be as successful as it was? I know, Godzilla versus Kong, I think, was the second biggest film so far, or others. Like, there were some really stunning numbers, and it wasn't pre-COVID numbers, but relative to the number of screens that were open.
Yeah.
It was really compelling performance. But how did you feel going into that?
Yeah, well, I think no surprise, Regal, myself, and others, other theater companies weren't real happy with the conversations that were happening with the studios. I think we understand, they were trying to, maximize and optimize their revenue. But, we were prepared for poor results. And I would say Regal wasn't open when Wonder Woman came out, but we certainly were with some limited theaters when Godzilla versus Kong. And that was a shocker. I don't know of anybody who predicted that it would outperform the prior movies, the prior Godzilla and King Kong movies that were out. And it's been a real pleasant surprise that, you could offer something, the studio could offer something day and date and still have the performance that it had. I think we're still in the camp of, an exclusive window for movie theaters is what's best for everybody, that It'll maximize the revenue that a studio can see before they take it. And, again, if you've got 45 days in a theater, then you've got an infinite number of days after that where the studio can do whatever they want with it, and they can maximize the streaming revenue with it. So we still think that's the right model, but certainly the window has shrunk. What was a 90-day window looks like it's going to net out at 45 for most studios and maybe a little bit less for some others.
Yeah, and I guess, even without that window, the consumer definitely signaled early and often that there is pent-up demand to get out of their gym jams and to get out into the world. So
yeah, we've seen that globally. I mean, China and Japan have had, their biggest weekends ever, not just post-COVID, but ever pre-COVID. And, we're a little bit behind them in kind of the recovery coming out of COVID, but we absolutely expect that. There's this pent-up demand. There's some great movies just on the horizon that are coming out, not to mention the ones that have opened up recently, like Godzilla vs. Kong, like A Quiet Place Part 2. And so we're really pleased with what the future looks like.
So, I mean, it's incredibly exciting, and I think anyone who claims to know exactly what's going to happen is probably fooling themselves. But we were stunned. I mean, I know the lead up to Godzilla versus Kong, like there were just incredible trends happening on social media, but you just didn't know that people were actually going to motivate. So it was exciting.
That's a perfect movie. We talk about movies that you've got to see in a theater. When you talk about these massive monsters and this huge action, seeing it on the giant screen in a movie theater is so much different than seeing it at home. And, I'm an HBO subscriber, and so I can tell you I've watched it both places. And, I watch in the theater first where that's the experience that you really want. And then, hey, I was able to watch it at home and maybe caught some additional nuances and enjoyed the story. But you really got to watch some of these movies on the big screen.
Yeah, there's the whole experiential perspective, right, which is just entirely different. It's always that segmentation of the films that you wouldn't mind watching on a plane, right? And this is definitely a tough sell, I think. Yeah, maybe second or third time. So Ken, I mean, you served in the United States Air Force as a captain. You were an avionics engineer. You've worked with Procter & Gamble, Red Lobster, several other iconic brands. Thinking about where you are today and what you're focused on, what has been the most influential decision in your career, do you think?
Well, I would say, again, growing up, I was pretty good at math. I was kind of steered to be an engineer, but without a doubt, the biggest impact on my career was making the decision to leave the Air Force and to transition out of engineering and into marketing. And again, I didn't know what marketing was. That's not a big career track in the Air Force. But I worked with a headhunter who specialized in taking junior officers into the corporate world. And he kind of steered me to sales or marketing. And the more I learned about marketing, the more excited I was, because it is that balance of kind of creative and data. And P&G was a great place to start my career. I learned a lot. And I'd say that was really the catalyst to getting me to where I am today.
And if you reflect back on that decision, sort of knowing what you know now, what advice would you have given to yourself back then?
That's a tough one. I think it's easy for me to say, hey, bypass the Air Force and go into a more liberal arts focused school that's got a great marketing program. But again, I think we're all pieces and parts of our experiences, and I don't regret the decisions I made. I learned a lot along the way. I learned a lot at the Air Force Academy. I learned a lot in the Air Force and at the various companies I've been at. So, I've had this conversation with my wife, and I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't have met the people I've met. I wouldn't be married to the woman I married if my path had gone a different way. So I don't have any regrets. But it's just interesting to look back at, when you don't know about something, it's hard to pick that as a path. And just I'm thankful that I met the right people who were able to give me good guidance.
Yeah, I think the myth of the sort of linear pathway to get to get to success. If there's been one theme that I've picked up in some of these conversations, it's that even the people that look like they planned this straight out of college didn't. You know. So.
Yeah, mine's definitely more of a zigzag than linear. That's for sure.
Well, and I mean, thinking about forgetting for a minute everything that you're achieving, internally and externally in your role at Regal Cinemas, now sort of shifting to, you're also sitting atop a massive organization, and you've got humans who are not only helping consumers think about the movies, they're living through this as well, and you're living through this as well. I mean, how did you approach that side of it? I mean, what in your background was most useful, I guess, when you really had to break down what was in effect a pretty intense crisis situation?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was tough as a leader. That was probably the toughest part of my job, because at Regal, we did end up shutting down all our theaters and furloughing 90% of the team. And so having to deliver that message to people who are really not just at Regal for a job, but really, they've committed years of their life to the company. So those are tough conversations. Again, not a fun part of it. As we're bringing folks back, that is the fun part of it. We're having these mini reunions every week with the folks that come back each week. But, bottom line is we lost 30% of the folks that we furloughed. And, they obviously needed to find work and went off and found something. And I'm thankful that they were able to do that. I miss them. So now we've got some holes to fill, and I think people are stepping up in new ways, and there's new opportunities for some people as well. And so, again, there's the downturns that happen, but then there's these positive experiences where the folks that were able to stick with us and come back, they've got some new growth opportunities, and I think long term it's going to be much better for them.
What leadership lesson did you most have to learn or relearn as you were managing your teams through the last year?
I think it's just, be truthful. Don't try to couch things, tell it to people straight. Folks can see through when you're trying to throw BS at them or when you're trying to hold back. And
what do you think drives that when a leader does that? Is that because they're trying to protect the person from the full truth, or what?
I think it can be any number of reasons, but certainly when there's bad news to share, I think you want to protect people and you want to do your best. But again, I think you can end up doing more harm if you're not forthright and clear on what to expect. And so when we furloughed folks, we didn't know when we were bringing them back, other than, my commitment to my team was, hey, we'll be communicating. And so basically every other week we had a Zoom session. The folks that were still here were on, and the folks that were furloughed were on. And, they asked questions, and I answered when I had an answer. When I didn't have an answer, I told them I don't know. I'll try to find out. But the ultimate answer of when are we coming back was just don't know. And, we just would share, what we all saw happening, and we're able to, again, eventually we tried coming back in the fall. It didn't work. We shut back down. And then in March, I think that's where we had a lot of confidence to say, starting April, theaters are going to be opening. We're going to start bringing people back. And again, I think that when I see the folks, we had a few more start today. They've got big smiles. I know they're committed to Regal. They've been waiting for this moment. And I think we're going to do bigger and better things because of that passion that everybody's got.
And beyond the message of, letting America know that you're open, which is obviously the first and foremost thing, what do you want them to understand? Like, what do you want your customers to understand next? What's next in line?
Well, again, I think we're a release for people. And I don't know that we have to get into too much detail in explaining that, but like you mentioned before, there is pent-up demand. There's nothing like, going into a dark theater, whether it's to watch a horror movie or a drama or a thriller or a big action movie, and just release the stress of your daily life, get lost in this great story that's on the big screen. And again, I think, people are already coming back. Some are maybe a little more tentative, but there's going to be a point where we're back to normal, and that's what people want. And so much fun to be part of this industry where, hey, we're not curing cancer, but we're giving a relief to people. And through that, there are some great things that we're doing through the Regal Foundation and some charitable giving that, is helping to, do things like solve cancer through donations that we're making. So I think it goes both ways, but really at the forefront, it's giving people a release to come and just have some fun and forget about whatever stress they're dealing with in their lives.
And that's always been a big piece of the role of entertainment and the role of film and cinema going. Do you think that's shifted? Do you think that's even more true now? Like, how are you thinking about this differently, I guess, this time round?
Yeah, I think we're still learning. I don't know that it's going to be that much different, but, we're certainly doing some things in the theater to recognize the changing expectations of the consumer. So, being able to order your concessions in advance. We've got some concepts where we're bringing food to the table, and we'll be testing out delivery of food. So again, I think expectations, we're doing private watch parties where right now you can rent out an entire auditorium. And what it used to be is you had to buy all the seats in the house to do that. Now we're saying for 20 tickets, you can bring 20 of your friends and have the auditorium to yourself. That's been incredibly popular. And that may stay or that may go away as, the further we get, into the vaccines. But I think it's those kinds of things that we're, constantly asking our customers, what do you want? What do you need? What do you expect? And trying to evolve with them.
What's the next mountain to climb for you? What are you excited about as you sort of look out into the future?
Well, I absolutely love Regal. I'm the CMO right now, so I lead an incredibly talented team. It's a pretty big team. I think our challenges, as I look at what's in front of us is we've got to continue to grow our revenue and our market share. And I don't think I'll feel satisfied unless we can do that. So I'm not looking over my shoulder or too far in the future of what else can come. I think right now I've got incredible challenges, and that's really what motivates me and drives me. And, who knows what the future holds. I'm not looking in the crystal ball, but I definitely am telling my wife, there's no active looking, she's been moved around. She's been a great partner. She's got a good career here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so things are good right now for us.
No, that's incredible. And I know you're also very active on some charitable boards and other pieces. So is that something that's also a big focus for you as you think about the ways that you want to keep contributing?
Yeah. And again, my point of, there are some companies that do amazing things. Somebody could look at Regal and say, well, you show movies, but what is truly satisfying is, we're part of two pretty prominent charities. So the Regal Foundation has been put together to really make donations in all of the markets where Regal operates. And, we've got a number of partners like St. Jude, the military, among others, that we really try to give back to. And then here in East Tennessee, Regal initiated Variety of East Tennessee, which is a chapter of the National Variety, which is really more focused on kids and helping kids. A lot of young children who need help with mobility, that's a big focus. But that's a great thing as well to be part of in our hometown with Variety as well as nationally with the Regal Foundation.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I guess, maybe sort of a sidebar around, what you're excited about. What are you most excited about in the future of the entertainment business? Like, you also mentioned you also will simultaneously stream things, but how do you think about entertainment shaping up in the future?
Well, I think I expect it to evolve. And one of the ways we differentiate is through the formats and how you watch movies. So at Regal, for all intents and purposes, we've got exclusivity on 2 formats. One called 4DX, that is, you can watch a movie and there are 13 different atmospheric effects that happen throughout the movie. So seats move, rain, wind, snow. It's a pretty amazing experience. And so we're rolling that out in all of our new theaters and wherever we can. We've got dozens and dozens of those across the country. There's another format called ScreenX that's very different. It's basically a 270-degree screen. So you've got not just a normal screen in front of you, but really the wings as well. And so what you find is that's really even more immersive than a regular movie. You know, on top of that, we've got IMAX and RPX, but I think those are new formats. I don't know what's happening with virtual reality, augmented reality, potentially in a movie theater. I think there's smarter people than I that are going to be experimenting, and we'd love to be on the forefront of those.
No, I love it. Favorite movie of all time, or movies if that's too hard, and what are you most excited to see at a Regal cinema soon?
So on my signature, I've got favorite movies, and I think I've got 5 or 6 of them. I'll just throw out a couple. One is It Happens Every Spring, which is a movie, I don't know if it was late 40s or 50s. It's a college professor, kind of nerdy, stumbles upon a compound that repels wood. So you can imagine he becomes a pitcher and a very successful one. So that was just a fun movie I go back to every year. My first kind of R-rated movie that I can recall was The Omega Man in the early 70s. So that was fun. And no, I wasn't 17 at the time. And then outside of that, I love The Warriors. I've got a little poster in my office that was a gift from my son. The Matrix is another one that, so I love all of those. In terms of what I'm most excited about, I'm excited to really see any blockbuster, because what that means is people are going to really be pouring into the movie theater. But most recently I was very excited about A Quiet Place Part 2, because that's a movie that just broke the mold. That it's a horror movie with very little dialogue. There's certainly sound effects that, again, you think, do you need to see it in the theater? And that just enhanced the experience. But outside of that, I would say Top Gun Maverick, even though it's kind of the Navy, it goes back to, some of my buddies and fighter pilots. And, Tom Cruise to me is just amazing, and how he can just keep doing these action movies over time, never aging. And that's what I'm really excited to see.
Amazing. Well, incredible. So wonderful to talk to you, Ken. It's such a fun conversation. Congrats on the reopening. So excited to get back there myself, and, really can't wait to follow up and keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Tanya. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.